Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sophie and in today's video we're going to be doing the first in a reread and resume series. So before I get into the video, please remember to like this video if you enjoy it and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I primarily read fantasy, thriller and romance books and I post videos every Sunday. So as I said, this is going to be the first book in my reread and resume series. I got this idea from Becca and the Books, although it's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, but I wasn't sure how to sort of incorporate it into video format. So basically the premise of these videos is I'm going to be rereading the first book or the first few books in a fantasy series and then continuing on. So in this one we're going to be rereading the Forging Silver into Stars series. So I have read the first one and I have not read the second two. Now the first book is Forging Silver into Stars by Brigid Kemmerer. This is the sequel series to the Curse So Dark and Lonely series, which blew up a few years ago, and I actually really enjoyed this first book when I read it back in 2022. So you can see why I need to reread this series. I also have the very original covers for this very first book, which I personally prefer over the new covers, but it is what it is. I don't actually remember what this one is about. I remember nothing about it. So I need to reread this one in order to carry on with the series. Now, like I said, I read this back in 2022, and then there was quite a big gap between the first and the second book coming out. So the second book, Carving Shadows into Gold, came out in, I believe, 2025 at the very beginning of the year. I'm not actually 100% sure. Yeah, so this came out at the beginning of 2025, so there's a 3-year gap between these first two books. And then the third and final book I don't have a copy of just yet at the time of filming this intro, but it does come out in January of 2026, so I am waiting for my copy to arrive. So this is going to be a spoiler-free reading vlog. I'm going to do my best not to spoil anything. So let's get into our reread of Forging Silver into Stars and then our resuming of the rest of the series. I am just under halfway through Forging Silver into Stars by Brigid Kemmerer. So in this one we follow the events after the first trilogy, where we still have a lot of our main characters present. So we still have appearances from Prince Ren, Princess Harper and Grey and Leomara, and we still have the two kingdoms of Seal Shallow and Emberfall. Now this primarily takes place in Seal Shallow. So essentially we're following Leomara as she comes into her queendom with Grey as her king, and essentially in this book we follow three main characters: Tycho, Calin and Jax. Tycho was in the first trilogy. He is now a messenger who takes messages back and forth between the two kingdoms, and Jax and Calin are two people who live in Seal Shallow. Calin is a baker and she looks after her sister after her parents die, and Jax works as a blacksmith alongside his father. Now his father is very abusive towards him. Jax can never be a soldier because he actually lost a foot in a accident, and Calin and Jax are good friends. They look out for each other. The blacksmith and the bakery are near to each other, and essentially Jax gets caught up in something that his dad was involved in carrying messages for what we think are the truth bringers, who are wanting to bring down Leomara and Grey because they don't like that Grey is from another kingdom and also possesses magic. We follow Jax and Calin as they get caught up with this group of people and how they're just trying to make ends meet essentially in this kingdom. And we also follow Tycho as he goes back and forth between the two kingdoms, and he also gets involved with Jax and Calin in the main story. So that is essentially the plot of this first book. So I'm really enjoying this one so far. So I think this sequel series came out pretty close to the conclusion of the first trilogy. So as I said, it's really nice to see our original characters, and we're kind of essentially following on from the first trilogy. So we still get to see the characters that we've come to know and love. We also get introduced to a new story and new characters. I'm really liking how our characters haven't moved on essentially. So how to explain it? So like a lot of them dealt with a lot of trauma in the first trilogy, and they don't essentially move on from that. You see how it still affects them to this day. We have interactions between Ren and Tycho where Tycho's still a bit on edge about things that happened, and even the relationship between Ren and Grey is still a bit like, it's better but it's still not, you know, perfect. And it just kind of goes to show it's a good representation of like, not grief, but in a way that you maybe grieve friendships and you don't necessarily move on so quickly. I'm really enjoying being back in this world as well. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about rereading and continuing on this series because I do think maybe I've moved on a bit from YA fantasy, but so far I'm really enjoying this one. I think it helps that it's a world that I already know and really enjoyed. Like I really enjoyed the Curse Breakers series when that came out, so it's a world that I know and love, and I'm loving being back in it with some familiar characters that I love as well. And I'm also interested in this new storyline and how this is going to affect our main characters. Is it going to be a rehash of the same story from the first trilogy? I don't know. I'm interested to see where this is going to go. So currently Tycho is trying to plan a tournament between the two kingdoms to try and unite them, because there's a lot of animosity between all all the people in these kingdoms, they don't like each other, they don't like the new king and the new queen. It's interesting to see as well, like, even though, for example, Tycho has these rings that can pull on Grey's magic, and he is kind of baffled by the fact that people don't trust magic because he's only ever really known it to be a good thing, and a lot of these people think that it's bad. And it's kind of interesting to see him kind of dealing with these people, and even though he's like showing them that they're, I mean, I guess you can use magic for bad things as well as good things, but he's only ever used it for good things. He's like heals someone, and even then the person's still like, oh no, I don't trust magic. So it's interesting to see like the, what's the word I'm looking for, it's not the animosity but the prejudice. It's interesting to see the prejudice against magic users, even though magic essentially saved them the first time round. And yeah, I'm just really enjoying this one so far. It's really fun being back in this world. This is really quick to read. It's YA fantasy, and like I said, it's a world that I already know and love, so it doesn't really require too much from me. But I'm really enjoying being back in this world. I've loved what I've read so far, and like I'm just under halfway really, because it's just over 500 pages, this first book, and I had actually forgotten quite a bit about this book, but as I'm reading it, things are starting to come back to me. So even though I read this like, what, 4 years, well, I think it was September 2022 that I read this, so even though it's been like 3 and a bit years since I read this, I am remembering a few things. But I'm definitely glad I'm rereading this so I can finish out the trilogy. And yeah, so I'm going to get back to reading this one, and I'll check back in with you guys when I'm a bit further through. But so far so good, and I definitely say so far, if you enjoyed the Curse Breakers series, then I would definitely recommend this one. So I finished reading Forging Silver into Stars by Bridget Kemmerer, and I'm going to stick with my original 4-star rating. I think if I read this now for the first time, it would be more of a 3.5-star rating, but I'm going to stick with my 4-star rating back when I originally read it. So I think this actually wrapped up pretty nicely and could be almost read as a standalone if you weren't interested in carrying on with this series. But for me, I really enjoy this world. I'm really interested in our new characters and where they're going to go, but also seeing where our old characters are up to and what's going to happen to them going forward. I really enjoyed Bridget Kemmerer's writing style as usual. You know, she writes a really fast-paced, interesting book with a few twists that you kind of don't really see come in. Like I said, I'm really interested in where all our characters are going to go and what's going to happen to this world, because it's a world that, you know, I know and I love, and I have been reading this world for quite a few years now. So I'm really interested to see where we're going to go and where Bridget Kemmerer is going to take this story. I don't really know exactly where it's going to go. I am a bit concerned about some of our characters and their potential fates. I'm not sure if Bridget Kemmerer has the guts to go there and maybe kill one of the beloved characters off, but I'd be really interested to see if she does. So yeah, I'm really excited to pick up the second book in this series. I don't really have too much else to say other than it was really enjoyable and definitely one of the better sequel series that I have read, or at least this first book is anyway. So I'm really interested to see where this goes and carry on with this series and get this one wrapped up. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. A 4-star rating, would highly recommend if it sounds interesting to you. You definitely don't have to read the Curse of Dark and Lonely series if that doesn't interest you. You can definitely go into this one, but you might miss a lot of the backstory and you won't be as connected to some of the characters that we meet in this book. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. 4-star rating and excited to carry on with this series. I am just under halfway through the next book for this vlog, which is Carving Shadows into Gold. So in this one, we still have the 3 main perspectives from the first book. The only thing I'm finding is I don't really think we need a perspective from both Jax and Tycho, considering at the beginning of this book they are together. So I don't want to say the plot of this because obviously that's a spoiler for what happened in the first book, but essentially our 3 main characters are kind of all split up. Callan is still in Still Shallow, Jax and Tycho have ended up back in Emberfall, and then Tycho seems to be the one that's going back and forth between the 2 places. So Jax has ended up in Emberfall, and the first sort of 100 pages was just from Jax and Tycho's perspectives. I don't really think it's necessary to go back and forth between their perspectives when they're together. So I found myself getting very confused as to whose perspective we were reading from because they kind of read the same. The only sort of clear difference is that obviously Tycho in the later bit of this book, he goes back and forth between the 2 kingdoms a lot. So we have Callan in Still Shallow with the Queen and the King, dealing with the aftermath of what happened there, and she's learning who she can trust in the palace and things like that. And then we've got Jax and Tycho. Jax, we had a lot of him in the first 100 pages with Tycho, and we've not really read much from him since, so we don't really know how he's getting on in Emberfall. And then Tycho is kind of going back and forth. We've just read that he's like on the way to Still Shallow, he's been attacked, and he again, no one really knows who they can trust and things like that. They're still trying to find out who is out to get the king and the queen and the royal family, and who, you know, doesn't have their best interests at heart. What's going on with these 2 kingdoms, who are still, there's still clearly a lot of animosity between the 2 of them. And yeah, I just don't think we need both of their perspectives when they're together because it's getting a bit confusing, and then like they're separated and now we're just not reading from Jax, so it's just a bit odd. I'm more interested definitely in Callan's perspective. I just find that when I'm reading Jax and Tycho at the moment, I'm just really not interested. Callan definitely has a more interesting perspective because obviously she is very close now with the Queen especially, quickly. So I'm interested to see what happens there with this storyline, but I think where we are in Emberfall, it's kind of difficult to keep up with the plot, as most of the plot is happening in the other kingdom. I do wish we were seeing a little bit more of Ren and Harper, and because we do get mentions of them, and like Ren makes quite a few appearances, but it's just like tidbits. And I think if you're gonna kind of go back and forth between these two kingdoms, I feel like you need to have a bit of a plot going on in Emberfall. There's not really a lot going on there at the moment. Maybe as we get further through this book, something more will develop. I'm definitely not enjoying this one as much as the first one. Like, I'm reading it pretty quickly. I mean, it is like a YA fantasy series, so you know, it's a quick read, it is interesting, and I'm hoping it picks up towards the end of the book, going into the third book. This is definitely like middle book syndrome for sure. So like I said, I am having a good time with it. It's just not as good as the first one. I'm just confused as to where the plot's going. Like, we're 200 pages in, we're not really getting anywhere. We've kind of set up where our characters are, and now Tycho's rushing off back, and we've not really heard anything from Jax, so I guess he's just sort of there. Callin is kind of discovering what's going on where she is, which is kind of interesting, and Tycho's just kind of here, there and everywhere. So I'm gonna crack on back with this one and check in with you guys when I'm finished. But so far I am liking it. It's just definitely not as strong as the first one in my opinion, and I don't know why there was such a big gap between the first and the second book. I don't know if maybe, did she publish the Defy the Night series in between the first book in this series and the second one? I can't remember. I'm interested to know why there's a bit of a gap. Like, was she struggling to think of what to do? I don't know. But yeah, I am liking this one so far. I'm eager to finish this one and find out what happens and see where our characters are going to go. But it is fun being back in this world again. Like, it is a world that I do love, but I just wish we kind of got more of it. It just seems like we're very back and forth with what's going on and not a lot's really happening. So I'm going to crack back on with this one and check back in with you guys when I'm done. So I did finish reading Carving Shadows into Gold, and I'm going to give this one a 3.5 star rating. I did think this was a good installment in the series, but I do think it was very middle book syndrome-y. I feel like not a lot really happened in most of this book. It was only at the very end, the last sort of 70 or so pages, where we had a lot of action and actually a lot of politicking that actually led to something. I think in the rest of this book it was a lot of going around in circles and the same argument or same discussion being had multiple times with regards to, like, obviously Leah, Mara and Grey. They were just kind of having the same argument over and over, and then all the same discussions over and over, and then they weren't talking to each other, and then everyone was having these discussions around them, and it was just like, we've had this conversation a million times, like, let's just make a decision and go for it. And it was just the same with like every sort of plot line really, and like Tycho and Jax and things that were going on there. It was just the same thing over and over again, so it was a bit repetitive, and I think this could have been cut way down, or maybe even just put into a duology. I don't know. I'm hoping that the third book will be a lot stronger and really round out the series quite nicely, but I am excited to get to that one and see where all our characters end up. I do think that some of the journeys that the characters are going on are going to be quite interesting and have quite an impact on this world because of like who they are and their relationships to one another. So I can't really go into the details of exactly what happened because obviously it's a second book, but yeah, I did enjoy this one at 3.5 stars, hoping that the third book is a lot stronger. But I did have a good time with this, and I'm not saying it was bad with all the repetitiveness and stuff. It was just got a bit tedious near the end, and I was just like ready to wrap this book up. So yeah, excited to read the third book and see where we go with these characters and this world. So I have started the last book for this read and vlog, which is the third book, Sparking Fire Out of Fate by Bridget Kemmerer. So I'm currently just over 170 pages into this one, and I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about this one. I think considering I'm nearly halfway through, we've really not done a lot so far, and I think the second book was very like middle booky, not a lot really happened. It kind of separated out some of the characters in setup for this book, and then I'd say like the first 170 pages is just more setup and almost backtracking on what we achieved in the second book, which again wasn't really a lot. So I am interested to see where this goes, but I am just a bit worried we're not going to get a satisfying wrap up to this series just because of how long it's taking to like really get going. Like, I don't know what the point of what our characters are doing so far. So without giving spoilers away, quite a few of our characters are now separated into the two kingdoms, and now we're kind of working our way back together, but there's animosity between the two kingdoms. So what's going to happen between the two kingdoms? It feels a bit repetitive of the third book in the Curse So Dark and Lonely series. I'm a bit disappointed so far, considering that the first book in the series was quite strong. I'm hoping that maybe I'll change my mind and I'll be proven wrong. We have got a new perspective of one of the characters that has featured throughout this whole series, which I think adds a very interesting perspective. We've added another perspective. We've now got 4 perspectives, and it's just, I don't know, considering that the 2 sets of characters are together, they're in the same locations, it's just a bit repetitive, which is what I said about the second book. So I'm hoping this picks up and we do get a bit more of an interesting plot as to what is going to happen with these two kingdoms, because she's not going to drag this out into another series, right? I hope not. I hope we do get a satisfying conclusion. So I am, like I said, I'm 170 pages through, nearly halfway through, and not a lot has really happened so far. So I'm hoping it picks up and gets a bit more interesting and really does start to feel like a final book, and that we get a satisfying sort of, not a fight or like a battle, but like it feels like that's where it's heading. Like we're heading towards a battle between our two kingdoms or between the bad guys. I don't know what's going to happen, so I'm going to carry on reading and check back in when I'm maybe nearly done. I'm not sure when I'll check back in, maybe when I've got something else to say. But yeah, so far I'm not loving this installment and I'm hoping that it picks up. I'm just coming to wrap this reading vlog up as I have now finished Sparking Fire Out of Fate by Bridget Kemmerer, and therefore finished the Forging Silver into Stars series, and I'm going to give this one a 3.5 star rating. So I definitely think the first book is the best one in this series. This one, the conclusion to it I just thought was really anticlimactic, and I don't know if it's a problem with me, but I'm finding lately that a lot of like ending of fantasy series is just really anticlimactic and quite dull. I think honestly ever since I read Heroes by Joe Abercrombie, which is a book, it's literally like a 500-page book that's just one battle in this like series, and ever since then, when I know what a battle can be and how much detail you can go into, to literally have like 2 pages of a conflict that we don't even really get to see a lot of, it's just really disappointing. So the ending is quite open-ended and I didn't really love it. I think that the first book was so strong in setting up the conflicts in this series. Like we had conflicts between Grey and Liamara and their kingdoms, with how Syl Shallow is really opposed to magic still, despite having Grey on the throne as well, who wields magic. And then we have like the conflict between the two kingdoms and conflicts within the kingdoms. We have these Truthbringers who are trying to get rid of Grey, and then they sort of turn on the Queen as well. And I think we also have the Scravers as well, and I just think the whole all the conflicts were just really poorly executed and just quite dull. We finally get a standoff between the Truthbringers and the King and the Queen. There was more climax to it in the first book. Like there was just nothing here. We literally got like 2 pages and then the army swoops in and saves the day, and it's just kind of like, is that it? Like, is that really it? I just didn't like it. I want more. When you're spending 3 books building up to a conflict, I want more from the conflict. I want the nitty gritty, like in Heroes by Joe Abercrombie. And then I think that the solution as well was just really poor, and I think that the relationships, like we just spent way too much time sulking. Like all the characters were just sort of sulking. Like yeah, I just really didn't love this one, and I'm a bit disappointed in the ending to it, to be honest. I think 3.5 is a fair rating. It was okay, I liked it, but I just think like for a trilogy, this being the end book is just quite disappointing really. So I think this series overall is about a 3.5 star rating on average. So the first one I gave a 4 star, the second one a 3 star, and this one a 3.5, so on average it's about a 3.5. I definitely think that YA fantasy definitely is not for me anymore. I'm really struggling with it, and I keep saying this and I keep picking them up, but I just think like I loved the Curse So Dark and Lonely series, and this just really fell flat for me. Just this ending, like I said, the first book was really strong. This ending was just really disappointing, and I think like the relationships were just all of the conflicts. We had conflicts between, you know, with relationships you go through problems and you have fights and arguments, and they were all just so easily resolved, and it was just kind of like it felt like there was just no stakes, and the stakes should have been really high. You had this couple, the King and the Queen, who her country is so against their relationship and their marriage and who they are, and like they're trying to unite the kingdoms. Like there was such high stakes, and it just, I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest with you, but unfortunately you don't know how much you're gonna like a series until you go into it. So I'm glad that I did reread the first one and continue on, because like this would have been hanging over my head and I really did want to get to this one. But I think if she writes any more in this world, I definitely don't think I'll be picking it up. I think I'm done now. I don't want to read anymore because I just think it's just dragging out a little bit more now. I don't really feel like this needed to be written. But yeah, 3.5 stars I think for this series I think is a fair rating. So that is going to be it for my very first reread and resume reading vlog. Comment down below if you like these styles of videos, if you like where someone reads an entire series in a video, because I'm not sure really if you'd be interested in watching this unless you're interested in the series. Let me know. Please let me know what you think of this series if you've read it. I'd love to hear your guys' opinion. Please remember to like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.